This documentary is gonna be about Ernest Hemingway, that is a writer, representative of the 20s. He wrote his main novels during 1920 and 1950. He's a particular guy, particular person, of the American literature, and I wanted to investigate, to research about his works, about his life, because I'm pretty interesting about him as a person and as a writer. Another reason for which I chose Hemingway for this documentary is because he really changed literature in the way in the way to express ideas, in the way to show descriptions and letters, and he not only influenced American literature but the whole world literature. Well, now to continue about talking about Hemingway, more specifically about his life, I'm gonna give different facts about him in order to give a context of what I'm going to talk about. Well, he began his life July 21 of 1899, just ending the 19th century, and he was born in the United States, as is obvious. He produced most of his works between the 20s and the 50s, as I already said, and he won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954. Many of his works are classics of American literature. He actually influenced a lot of writers that came before him, after him. I'm gonna talk about this issue later. He published 7 novels, 6 short story collections, and 2 non-fiction works during his lifetime. A further 3 novels, 4 collections of short stories, and 3 non-fiction works were published posthumously. I was missing to say, I had to say it, that Hemingway was born and raised in Oak Park, Illinois. He began different studies in like a journalist in this place. Then he went out of the country. He was in the World War, in the Great War, as an ambulance driver, and that was the basis of one of his novels that is called Farewell to Arms, one of his most recognized novels. During the time he was there, he met and was influenced by modernist writers and artists in the 1920s. Experienced community known. This community is known as the Lost Generation. He died in Cuba. Finally, at the end of his existence in the world, he died in Cuba in 1961. It was found that, as with a shot in his head that was produced by himself, but there is actually a debate if it was truly suicide or if it was just an accident. And the reason for this debate is that the position of the bullet is not a normal position of someone that suicides. So there is this debate. When he lived in Paris, he was, in his words, he was poor but happy. What this means is that he was not actually looking at to be rich, to be of the high social economic class, social status, but he was looking at for having a good life in which he can be happy. For example, for this reason, he went to countries in Africa. He ended his life in Cuba, not having a lot of economic resources, but looking out for happiness mainly. Well, now regarding to the relation between Ernest Hemingway and the Roaring Twenties, well, and all the things that happens in the 20s in the US, it is interesting because even though he's an American, he lived most of his life in other countries. For example, he lived in Spain, in Italy, in France, in different African countries, and in Cuba, as I already said. The interesting part of this is that he did not actually live in the Roaring Twenties, so he has not a direct relation between with the twenties, as for example Scott Fitzgerald has. In addition, his novels does not show this period of time. His novels usually talk about things that he experienced in his different trips or his the different places where he lived. Also, the themes of his novels are not actually of America, but of different things. For example, of sports, special baseball that is related with America, but not like the complete context. For example, themes like women, like landscapes, death, existentialism, and all this with recurrent personal ideas that influence in different ways the whole literature in the world after his death, and especially because he won this Nobel Prize that I already mentioned. The thing is that, for example, in difference to Fitzgerald, he does not show the American context, right? So anyway, he is an icon of the 20s. He's an icon of the 20s, not because he talks about exactly the 20s, but because if you think about the 20s, the American literature in the 20s of America, you first of all think about Ernest Hemingway as well as Scott Fitzgerald, but Ernest Hemingway is like one of the representative persons of the American literature in the 20s. So the main reason for this is that he won the Nobel Prize of Literature. That is the reason for which he has this extensive recognition. Well, now with all this previous information, what in my personal opinion makes Ernest Hemingway interesting is the legacy that he left. He gave a radical change in literature history, United States literature as well. And what makes special his literature, his novels, his short stories, is his fascinating narrations with descriptive and extensive, beautiful reflections about life, with unforgettable dialogues between common people, such as in his most recognized novel, The Old Man and the Sea. All his works are completely beautiful, giving reflections about different topics, as I already said, about death, about existentialism. He is constantly talking about a woman, about the role of a person in the world, about different things that makes him a special person and a special character in literature history of the world. So finally, to end up this documentary about Ernest Hemingway, it is important to emphasize that his importance is not really the moment in which he lived, not the moment he was not completely recognized, even though he won a Nobel Prize, because as most of the real incredible writers in history, the recognition comes after his death. And the same happens with Ernest Hemingway. He is one of the best writers in literature history. He has influenced a lot of things, and not just in literature, not just like in novels, but also in the way to think. He has a special ideology. He has a special way of a special point of view about life. So to end up with this, I want to say that Hemingway is part of the 20s because of his legacy, not actually because of what he did in that moment for the US, because he lived most of the time alone or in different parts. Well, in the last generation he has a group of writers of the modernist, but the rest of the time he was kind of alone in his works and just writing his things, and all these things makes him an incredible, fascinating writer that I really wanted to research about, because I knew before researching about Hemingway that he was an excellent writer. He actually is one of the characters of history of the 20s, despite the fact that he did not illustrate the context of the 20s, but the context of the whole world. Okay, so that's all about Ernest Hemingway in this documentary. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this documentary. I hope you learned something about Ernest Hemingway that is a fantastic and important character in the world history, and especially in the American literature history, one of the representative of the American literature that really changed the literature in the world. Thank you.